Us Peruvians, we're very big in nicknames. A person normally has many nicknames. For example, Brother Jose, in our community, he's received many nicknames. Joselito, Joselo, Joselo Days, and the list doesn't end. In fact, I remember that in the novitiate, our formator wanted us to be a little bit more formal. So he told us every time that someone calls out another person with a nickname, you have to do 10 push-ups. We were ripped back then. Why am I talking about nicknames in the Immaculate Conception? Because today we hear that Mary has a special name among the angels. The angels have a special name for Mary. She has a nickname in heaven. When the angel greets Mary, she doesn't say, "Hail Mary." She says, "Rejoice, gratia plena." Gratia plena. In Greek, ke charitomene. In English, full of grace. That's her name. Look at the text. The angel doesn't say, "Rejoice, Mary." The angel says, "Rejoice, full of grace." This expression, full of grace, is the expression that sparked the whole reflection of the church about calling Mary the conceived without sin. The declaration that came in the year 1854 had its origin in the nickname that the angels gave Mary, full of grace. But then why did it take so many years for the church to make up their mind? Wasn't it clear from the start that she was full of grace? Now listen up. The story of the dilemma is really simple but really beautiful. On one hand, people thought Jesus Christ is the Savior of every human being. He is the Redeemer of every creature. If Mary was conceived without sin, how can He redeem Mary if she was in need of no Savior because she was sinless? And to make matters even more complicated, Mary says today in the Gospel or in her Magnificat, "My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God my Savior." So she calls God her Savior, in a sense admitting that she was in need of a Redeemer. But on the other hand, there were other theologians, St. John Damascene among the greatest, who said, when the Son of God came to dwell in the world, the first place where He came to dwell in was in the womb of Mary. And for St. John Damascene, it only made sense that the womb of Mary would be unstained because she was going to hold the Redeemer, and that He who was sinless too, Jesus Christ. Doesn't this make sense? It makes sense. She ought to conform to He who she was to receive. So how do we bring together both statements that seem so reasonable? That Jesus Christ is the Savior of everyone, and she calls God her Savior. But the St. John Damascene also says, but it was necessary for God, for the Son of God, to dwell in a place that was stainless. Who brought the solution? A Franciscan. His name is Duns Scotus. And this is the incredible proposition that Duns Scotus brought about. He said, Mary was saved like every other human being, but she was saved in an anticipated way. And I'm going to give you an example that really brings everything together. Think about someone who falls into drugs. Think about someone who really messes up their life and falls into a very dark pit. But then this person encounters a recovery group, a 12-step program. And the person is taken from the depths, the abyss of his addiction into freedom. Wouldn't this person be precise in saying, I was saved by my 12-step program? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You had fallen, and then you were brought back from your pit. But now think about this example. You're walking down the street with a buddy of yours. And you're so engaged in a conversation that you fail to see that the, what do you call the thing that tells you if you can walk or not? The crosswalk goes from green to red. And you're kind of walking, and he puts his arm and he keeps you from, boom, a bus runs in front of you. Wouldn't you say to your friend, oh, bro, you saved me. Thank you so much. So look at this. You can be saved in the same way when you fall, that when you're preserved from falling. And that's how you reconcile both statements. She was saved. That's why she calls God her Savior. And Jesus Christ is the Redeemer of every human being. But at the same time, we can say, yeah, it makes sense that she would be called full of grace. And you know what's so interesting? This sense of being saved before falling, you know who also writes about this? Thérèse of Lisieux. The little flower also says, I know that I've been saved because I have committed many sins from which I have been forgiven. But Thérèse, a mystic and a doctor of the church, she also had the sense that in a way, God had saved her from the sins she didn't commit. Let me finish with this. When we hear about the Immaculate Conception and how Mary never fell, something inside of us goes like, well, that's not fair. How is it that Mary gets that privilege and I don't get that privilege? Well, on one hand, we could say the privilege is proportional to her mission, but we could also say those who don't sin, think about Jesus and Mary, they don't suffer less, they suffer more. That's what St. Thomas of Aquin says. Those who sin suffer less than those who don't sin. And that's why we have a devotion to the hearts of Jesus and Mary. Because we know that although they haven't sinned, we know that they have been deeply offended by those who sin. So today, brothers and sisters, let's finish remembering the words of Padre Pio. Padre Pio always said, consecrate yourself to the heart of Mary. Find shelter in the heart of Mary. And someone once came to Father Pio and they asked him, why do you always give the same advice? And Father Pio said, the heart of Mary was never stung by the poison of sin of Satan. Those who dwell in the heart of Mary also become protected from the poison of sin. So today, brothers and sisters, take your shelter in the heart of Mary. Remember that her privilege doesn't take her away from us. She suffered more than us. But her privilege also becomes a shelter for each one of us.